Everyone. So today I'm working on some Catcan stoves, some Fancy Feast stoves. Now I traditionally use your canister type stoves. I've got a pocket rocket that screws on the top of a canister. It's very reliable. It's a great stove for hiking. However, I have been experimenting quite a bit lately with different alcohol stoves, predominantly the Fancy Feast or the Catcan stove. In fact, here's the first one that I made. And this is just a Fancy Feast container cleaned out with holes punched along the rim. And this works pretty good. You put an ounce of fuel in there, it'll boil water. It takes about 7-8 minutes. Not too bad. Not as efficient as I would like. And then you look on a bunch of other YouTube sites or people that are using Fancy Feast stoves, and they have the little bit more complicated stove with the pot insert or the pot stand inserted into the Fancy Feast container with a little bit of fiberglass wicking between the two. A little bit more complicated, but possibly a bit more efficient with fuel. And so I've made a couple of these. I want to make another one or a couple more so that I can give to a buddy of mine. And the materials, when you buy this stuff, the wicking material comes, you can pick it up at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you get a lot for $7, $8. And so you can make a lot of stoves. You'll end up needing the stadium style beer can. These are fairly cheap at a gas station. I think I paid $1, $1.50 for that. And then of course some Fancy Feast containers, some Fancy Feast. Now I've already emptied out the food from the containers, peeled back the lid, emptied out, but I still have to prepare the can a little bit. And so we'll need to work on that. Some other things that you're going to need, I use Goo Gone to clean off the residue on the outside that's left over from the label. I've got a couple screwdrivers here. I've got the round one so that there's a raised lip in here. When you take the lid off, I use that round screwdriver to kind of push that lip down. And then I've got a flat head, as you'll notice, or sometimes when your wicking material, when you press fit all this together, the wick will be up a little bit higher than the rim of the Catcan, and if that happens, that part of the wick will burn. And so I use the flathead screwdriver to kind of stuff it down back into the food can. Marker for markering the beer can. A pair of scissors for cleaning up edges, cutting the material. I've got hacksaw for cutting up my beer can. I've got a file for rough edges. I've got some pre-cut fiberglass material. I've got a drill with a little drill bit on it. One of the things with these stoves is when you put your pot down on it, there's the potential for pressure buildup. And so you want to drill a couple holes, or at least one little hole into the side of the beer can. That's kind of a release mechanism, pressure release. All right, and let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is finish cleaning these containers up. We're preparing these containers. We'll make 2 stoves. It won't take very long. Like I said, it's super inexpensive. I'm sure there are a bunch of other solvents that can get this adhesive off. I use Goo Gone. I think it's a great product, and it takes this little bit of glue right off. If you leave that glue on, it'll char, it'll burn after a while. So it's better to just get it off now. Now I'm not particularly partial to any type of stove. I like kind of messing around. I like do-it-yourself projects. This is a really inexpensive, easy do-it-yourself project. for backpacking and camping. You know, people think that, oh, I'm going to use an alcohol stove, I'm going to get a Fancy Feast stove and it's going to save all this weight. And the reality is, it probably won't. You know, my pocket rocket weighs about 3 ounces. I can get a small canister for it, which weighs about 8 ounces. So, what am I, 12 ounces, 11 ounces into it to carry a stove and the fuel. And then, you know, one of these cat cans, Fancy Feast stove, that might be sub an ounce, but then you've got to get the fuel for it. So I'm using heat in the yellow bottle. If you've got to carry an ounce of fuel for every time you're going to run your stove, and you run your stove 2-3 times a day, you're easily carrying 8 ounces, 10 ounces of fuel for your Fancy Feast stove. And so the weight difference really, if that's the only reason to switch over to a cat can stove, I think you'll be disappointed. You know, now if you're looking to move in, use a cat can stove because you want to use something that you made yourself, or you want to use it because it's quieter, less prone to breaking. Those are good reasons to try a cat can stove. The beauty is, if you only want to use your stove a couple times, like a lot of times when I go out backpacking, I might only want a couple cups of coffee the whole weekend I'm out. Maybe I'm not trying to cook my meals. And in that case, I only need 2-3 ounces of fuel. And I really can save quite a bit of weight. Good to go. Nice and clean. This stuff lasts forever. I just keep it out here in the garage. So now that we've got these set up, we need to prepare our beer can. There's a lot of ways to cut these. I think if I were to make a ton of cat can stove, I might make a jig to slide it in and be able to cut it up. I might get use my chop saw to try to cut it up. But only making 1 or 2 stoves, I'm just going to use the hacksaw. Now the problem with the hacksaw is that it leaves a pretty rugged edge, and so you can use scissors to clean that up and use the file as well. So to start off with, 1 beer can, I'm going to get 2 stoves out of this. You could probably get 3. You're looking for about 2 inches of pot stand. I'm going to cut off the bottom as close as I can to the bottom. I'm going to measure it, mark it 2 inches, cut it, do the same. Now, you want to have a nice clean surface to measure from. So I use a pair of scissors and kind of cut away from you. You can clean up any jagged edges and make it as flat of a surface as you can. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Just use a little ruler here. Mark 2 inches. You know, this is it's not exact science. You know, we're dealing with horseshoes and hand grenades. If we can get pretty close, then we're going to be in good shape. We don't need to be exact. There, so that looks really nice. Like I said, we're about 2 inches. We've got fairly flat surfaces so that everything's going to sit nicely. That should work out really well. Looks like that. We got a little off centered. It's not a big deal. Use your scissors. Clean up that edge. Very nice. Looks pretty good. Outstanding. So now we have our inserts and our cap cans ready. The stove's almost ready to go. We just need to include the wicking material that goes around inside of it. Now to do that, we want to cut a little strip, roughly 3 inches in width, right? Because we're going to fold this over, and we're ultimately looking for about 1.5 inches in width to wrap around the insert. Now you can use spray adhesive or masking tape or a lot of things to keep this wicking material in place. I just hold it with my hands. When you wrap it around your insert, you want it to be long enough to wrap around. I'm going to do it twice here. I've made some cans where it's just wrapped around once. I've made some cans where it was wrapped around twice. As long as what you're looking for is for this to press fit into the can nice and snug. You'll notice that this wicking material, you get lots of fraying ends. At this point is usually where I'll kind of trim this down to the size that I want and try to get rid of some of those fraying end pieces. Now the goal is when we push this down into the cap can is that we want this wick material to fold around the bottom, and that's going to act as our wick. A little hole where I've got it together, and then just work work it. You just kind of want to work the can, work that insert, kind of in a twisting motion, screw it into place. Nice tight fit, and then all of these frayed ends will just snip. And of course, as I mentioned before, any kind of wicking material, any of that fiberglass wick or cloth that is up above the lip is going to burn a little bit. And so I just use a flathead screwdriver and press it back down into the cat can. There you go, and that looks nice. Snip some of these fraying ends on the inside. There we have it. One completed Fancy Feast stove. Let's do one more. And I'll be ready to test them out. Alright, so let's go ahead and finish up this next one. Cut another piece of cloth that we can use. Again, you want to cut about 3 inches. You know, cutting a little more is better. And you can always trim it down. I'll tell you, for a $7 investment for this fiberglass, you can definitely get a lot of stoves out of it. Just fold this in half.
Again, just trim up the ends.
Just kind of press fitting it down in there, screw it into place, and so you get a little bit
Screwdriver to kind of push back this mesh. Good stove.
The last thing you want to do is drill a hole into the side.
Like this side. And go on each side.
there we have it. Let's light them up, see what they look like. Oh yeah. So there you have it. 2 more perfectly working Fancy Feast stoves. And again, I don't know that this is going to replace my more traditional canister top, but it sure is a lot of fun to play around with. I don't know if you like these kinds of videos, let me know. You know, I've got a couple other do-it-yourself projects in mind, maybe do another quilt here pretty soon. So definitely let me know what you think. Until then, catch you next time.